Hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on how DynPro2 can help you. I am Amy Fuller, today's webinar organizer. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's presentation. You will have the opportunity to submit questions by typing them into the question and chat window on your control panel. You may send in your questions at any time during the presentation. We will collect these and respond to as many as we can during the question and answer session at the end of today's presentation. Any questions not answered during the presentation will be followed up on after the webinar. Under the handouts area on your control panel, we have added the DynPro2 brochure that you can download at your convenience. Please know that we are also recording today's session, and we will be sending out a link to all attendees, so you can review this webinar again at a later time. We do have everyone on mute to avoid any background noises that may distract you from hearing the presentation. One final item I would like to add is that this is our first webinar here at Taylor, so we appreciate your patience if we encounter any speed bumps along the way. We have an action-packed webinar for you, so I would like to introduce you to today's presenters. Eric Miles is one of our regional business consultants here at Taylor. Eric covers the Midwest region of North America, along with Central and South America. Eric has been with Taylor for over 10 years. We also have Nick Smith. Nick has filled many roles here at Taylor and is currently an application engineer. Nick has been with Taylor for over 13 years. I am now going to pass it over to Eric.
Good afternoon, everyone. We again would like to welcome you to our DynPro2 webinar. I am Eric Miles, and for today's webinar, we are very excited to provide an overview of Taylor Dynamometer's new DynPro2 data acquisition and control system. We will discuss the differences between DynPro2 systems, as well as highlight some of the many features. We will then show a live demo of DynPro2 featuring two tests. The first test will be a fully automated test with predefined steps, including pass-fail criteria. And then the second test will be a step test with operator-defined steps that we create on the fly. During both tests, we'll be highlighting the many features of DynPro2, and at the end, as Amy mentioned, we'll have a question and answer session. Getting started. What is DynPro2? Well, DynPro2 is a state-of-the-art data acquisition and control system which provides one common platform for all your engine, vehicle, and industrial component testing. DynPro2 can automate the industrial controls for a room, test cell, even your entire test facility, allowing you to integrate room temperature, lights, safety interlocks, and much more into your overall testing process. For today's demonstration, we'll be running an engine dynamometer system, but a chassis dynamometer configuration is very similar. The two systems have identical hardware and similar unique screens. The main difference between the chassis configuration and the engine configuration is that the chassis system includes a wireless handheld device, which is still an option for engine systems. DynPro2 has two standard configurations, our silver system offering 16 temperature channels, and our gold system offering 32 temperature channels as well as additional system channels. DynPro2 is simple to use but flexible enough for the most rigorous applications. Frequently run tests can easily be created ahead of time and run over and over again with just a click of a button, providing consistent and repeatable results. Also, operators will be able to quickly create tests for those unique testing applications just by entering a few values. Tests include break-in tests, sweep tests, step tests, road load simulation tests, as well as others. DynPro2 offers professional reporting features, allowing you to generate customized reports for your company and your customers. This allows you to create your own layouts, or select from several templates that we provide with the system. Colors can be customized. Fonts and logos can also be customized on the reports. You can configure the report formats to include graphs, tables, both, as well as analysis information. You can export that data to text, Excel, and HTML. Now that's just a very brief overview of DynPro2. Let's discuss how DynPro2 works and how it can help you. A huge time-saving feature of DynPro2 is being able to start testing in just 3 clicks. Here's an example of how the 3-click process looks. Click 1, select the Install Project shortcut. Click 2, select the project file. Click 3, select the test that you want to run. It's as easy as that. So before we start the demo of DynPro2, we want to briefly explain what you'll be seeing in the 2 tests that we'll be showing today. For each test, we will open Test Setup Procedures, start support equipment, including ventilation systems, water systems, ignition power. Confirm that we have a safe test facility. Test outdoors are closed, guards are in place, as well as any additional safety interlock conditions being met. Next, we're going to start the engine and run the test. During the test, we'll perform quality checks, including pass-fail results, perform post-test checks, and then we're going to shut down the engine and support equipment, and finally generate a report. For our first test, as mentioned, we are going to be running an engine dynamometer test. This has been designed to take the engine through a rated power test cycle, starting with a warm-up. When the operator first starts DynPro2, the software takes him to the home screen you see here. This is the main navigation screen when using DynPro2. At the top of the screen is a window-style control ribbon, and there are 2 tabs to choose from. The first is the control panel, and the second tab is the screen design ribbon. In the control panel ribbon, easy access is provided to operators for using commonly used controls and commands. This includes test controls, the alarm status, data recording options, as well as screen controls and system commands. The screen design tab, if I click over here, takes us into the screen edit mode. This allows you to create a new gauge as well as edit and move existing gauges at any time, even while you're running a test. We'll show just a few features of the screen design a little bit later while running. Clicking back to the control tab, underneath the control window, under there we have the channel alarm window. This activates if an alarm triggers during the test. During the testing, we'll actually be showing some examples of what happens when a warning condition occurs. To actually start testing, we're going to select Install Project, as mentioned before. Next, we're going to click on the test that we're going to run today, and that's the engine demo. Now our screens and tests that have been previously defined are loaded. The systems are supplied from Taylor with pre-configured screens that are fully editable, so you can have a single screen or dozens of screens to view your test data. All we need to do now is select the test that we want to run. On the left-hand side, we have our test profiles here to select from. And today, for our first test, we're going to run the custom facility test. Once I click on that, our test panel becomes active down in the bottom middle. The test panel provides feedback indicating where we are during the test, as well as providing prompts to users looking for feedback. For today's test, we're going to be using our Taylor TD3100 portable dynamometer, which a few of you are familiar with. And for example, the first prompt provides the operator a chance to quickly reference a page in the TD3100 manual. This pull goes directly to a setup page in the manual referencing the X dimension. I can close this. Once I hit continue, a second prompt appears, providing the operator a chance to quickly reference the calibration procedure on the TD3100 in the TD3100 manual. Calibration with DynPro2 is simple as right-clicking on the channel that you want to calibrate. Another option when you right-click on a channel is to auto-zero the channel. So for this example, I right-clicked on torque, and it gives me the option to auto-zero. This will ensure that we have accurate horsepower readings. The confirmation box does come up, giving you a chance to select no. In this case, I'll select yes. I will go ahead and select continue. And as a part of any test, custom reminders or prompts can also be added to assist the operators in test setup and operation. I'm going to go ahead and select continue again. And the next step prompts the operator to update the customer information that will be on the report at the end. All the fields here are editable, and even the fields themselves can be adjusted. As soon as I select continue, the test moves on to the next step and begins to bring the facility support equipment online. First, we're going to have our test cell ventilation system turning on. We have status indicators at the top of the screen confirming that the systems are on. Our exhaust turns on. Next, our water system turns on. We have an engine priming cycle occurring. And now we're turning on our engine ignition. Waiting for ECM communication. And before we're able to proceed, safety interlock conditions need to be met. This includes the drive shaft guard, which is closed. And in this case, we also have interlocks on the test cell doors. Our cell doors are also closed. If the door opens, the test will shut down. Test has been designed to start the engine as part of the test sequence. You probably just heard the air starter. Our alarms are also activated now that the test has started. You'll notice that the shield indicator changed at the top of the screen. The test sequence is automatically entering a warm-up, taking our engine speed from idle up to 1,500 RPM. And we're also ramping the dynamometer load to 100 horsepower. During this warm-up step, we're going to hold here until we reach an exhaust temperature of 130 degrees Celsius. Warm-up can be based on oil temperature or other values as well. Now that we're warmed up, we're increasing the engine to 100% throttle. In this case, a little over 2,100 RPM. And we're going to ramp up our engine load to 200 horsepower. Now, this test was configured with pass-fail criteria, and as you'll see in a moment, DynPro2 will be indicating that it's recording data for its first pass-fail point. Again, feedback is given to the operator in the test control panel. And we're recording data for our first power check. Now a display window pops up shows that our target was between 185 and 215 horsepower. The operator has the opportunity to hit continue or retry. DynPro2 is just going to hold here. The software is just going to sit in a holding pattern until it receives a prompt from the operator. Once we hit continue, we'll move on to our next step. Engine speed is going to stay at full throttle, 100%. And our engine load is going to be increased to 250 horsepower. Now, the entire time we're running, the operator is able to keep track of all the pressure and temperature channels that are on the screen. They can even switch between screens. As you'll notice, I have 3 different screens loaded here. I can switch to a different set of gauges at any time. Our test panel is still active at the bottom, indicating where we are in the test sequence. And we're recording data for our second step. We're looking for our horsepower to be between 235 and 265 horsepower. And we're at 264, indicating that we have a pass status. If we fail the step, it'll actually indicate failed here, again giving the operator the opportunity to retry the step or continue on to the next step. Once we hit continue, we're again going to move on to our third power check. Now, on this step, we have an alarm that occurs if we reach a certain torque value. So that window will be showing up in just a moment. I'm going to hit continue. And we're increasing our engine power to 300 horse. Now we have that alarm window that came up, and what it does, it just shifts the screen downwards, and it indicates what channel the alarm occurred at, and this was the torque channel. The warning occurred anytime we were over 700 foot-pounds, and it records the values that occurred, as well as providing a timestamp, a date, and a description, indicating it was just a warning. We can go ahead and close the alarm panel. And we took our third data point. Again, we're looking for power to be between 285 and 315 horsepower. We also have an example here of what happens if we fail. We show that we had a failed point, clearly indicating, we highlight the text in red, and it clearly indicates that we failed a step. Again, we have the opportunity to retry, or we can hit continue. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and hit continue. And we're actually starting the cool down cycle. The engine load is being reduced down to about 100 horsepower, and engine speed is being dropped down to 1800 RPM. Again, this is all automatically done as part of the test. Next, DynPro2 is going to prompt the operator this is a good opportunity to enter any notes. Again, you can click between screens, keep an eye on any gauges, temperatures, pressures. And DynPro2 is prompting the operator to check for fluid leaks. A comment can be entered. And we'll just have to click save, and then we'll go ahead and press continue. What will happen is once we continue here, further ramp down our throttle and reduce all the load off the engine. Now the facility equipment will also turn off. Our ignition will turn off. Water system will turn off, and exhaust will turn off. We're also looking for a condition to be met before we shut everything off, we're looking for our exhaust temperature to be lower than 200 degrees Celsius. Now this brings up the DynPro2 data viewer window automatically at the end of a test, allowing us to review the results of the test and prepare them to generate a report. The data viewer again uses a window-style control ribbon with various options for setting up that report. Printing a report is as easy as selecting just the preview button. And since we're using pass-fail criteria on this test, I'm just going to confirm that the analysis checkbox next to the preview button is selected. Once I select preview, provide the print preview of the report with the company logo at the top, company name at the top, as well as the customer information we entered in earlier, operator notes, and underneath is just our analysis information. We don't have anything else. And now Nick Smith will be the operator for the second test.
Hello, thanks, Eric. Excuse me. What we're going to do now is we're going to actually run through the horsepower step test. The SS prior to the name is start to stop. It's just a little indicator we have, so we know the system is basically going to start the system, or the test is going to start the system, run through the complete test, and shut it down when we're done. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to just select that button because the test is preloaded. And once again, we're going to get a prompt to enter some customer information. So I'm going to just type in new customer, just so you can see a change later in the actual test or when the data is saved. Once you enter the information you want for the customer, you just select activate, and that's ready to go for this next test. At this point, we're going to select the continue button, and we're starting all our test cell support systems. As you can see, our exhaust is on, water is on, our fuel prime has become active here in a minute, along with our ignition power. Once our ignition power turns on, we're going to actually look for our ECM status down here in the test panel. And we got the status. That's pretty quick. At this point, we can verify that our dry shaft guard is closed. Nothing really changed there. Select continue. And also we can verify that our cell door is closed, and we're good to go. Here we just have indication letting the operator know that if the door is opened, the cell is going to shut down. Now we're going to start the engine. This is an automatic start based on engine speed over 500 RPM for a specific amount of time. Once it reaches that, it shuts down. And if it doesn't see engine speed within a specific amount of time, the starter is going to cut out, and we'll go through a stop test procedure that shuts down the cell and tells the operator, hey, your engine didn't start. All right, now we're going to go and enter some test parameters. This test is designed to kind of interface with the user and allow the user to set up his test kind of on the fly. We're going to enter our starting horsepower step, and we already have 200 entered in there, so we're going to 200 horsepower. Our end step, we're going to change to 350 horsepower. Select accept. Our step size, we're going to change that to 50 horsepower. And then our duration, we're actually going to change that. We're going to stay at each step for 60 seconds before we take our data point. Now we're going to look for this is our engine RPM for the test. We're going to run this test at about 2100 RPM. One thing I failed to mention is with our step size, we entered here our end horsepower, and our starting horsepower is 200 horsepower. The system knows based on what you set your end point and your starting point, whether we need to increment or decrement the steps. So you can basically enter whatever you want, and the system kind of takes control from there. We're going to select accept for our 2100 RPM. And now the system is going to sit in a holding pattern until we select our run test button. So if your operator has to go in or do anything else here, go throughout the facility, whatever the case, your system is protected, as we see up here, and ready to go. Now we're going to go ahead and select our run test button. And we're going to increase our throttle to 1500 RPM and our horsepower to 100. And that's just a little warm-up cycle that we have set up for this test. Once again, we're basing our warm-up off of exhaust temp. Once we reach above 125 degrees C, we're good to go. We've achieved our temperature, and we're in the process of running the test. Now we're ramping up to our 2100 RPM throttle set point, and we're loading down the engine to 200 horsepower. This is our load controller, and what this will do is mimic whatever comes up in our test panel as well as our throttle controller. I noticed here that I also want to go in my screen design, and I want to add a gauge, and then just use my window controls, my Control C and Control V. I'm going to add a new gauge here. I'm going to double click on that gauge. I'm going to add my fuel pressure. And we have 0 to 100 PSI. We're good to go there. And on this side, I think I'm going to go ahead and slide this over, and I'm going to add my inlet pressure, air inlet pressure. Let's see, air inlet temperature, I'm sorry. And then what do we have for a range? I think we're going to change that scale to 150. And then we're going to clean up the scale. We're going to actually add a little bit here. There, every 25 degrees we have a little tick mark. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to save that screen. So at this point, we already took our data at our 200 horsepower lug point. Now we're into our 250 horsepower lug points. As Eric mentioned, at any time you can go and navigate through your other screens. We have a graph set up that shows your some data, and also on that display or that screen it shows your controllers as well as your test panel. At any time you can actually turn off your test panel, and when the system is making a change or asking for some interface from the operator, that test panel will reappear, so it doesn't kind of leave you in the dark. If you want to turn it on manually, you can just go back up to the top ribbon and select the test panel button. All right, at this point, we're at our 300 horsepower lug point, and we reached that warning that Eric was talking about of 705 pound-feet. And again, we can set the system up to turn the cell off to reduce your load. We can set it to open up a water valve or do anything you really want with the cell. So we're going to kind of minimize that here, sitting at that 300 horsepower lug point. And I notice I have my air temp. I might want to see that in degrees C, so I'm going to go back into my screen design. I'm going to double click on that display. I'm going to go under my units, and I'm going to select here a dual display mode. I'm going to change it to a degrees C. So some operators like to see in degrees F, some like to see it in degrees C. It's kind of a little more user-friendly setup for our customers. Still sitting at, we just went to that 350 horsepower lug point. Now at any time throughout the test is predetermined its lug points, or I should say where it takes its data sample. At any time the customer can select record, record, record. And if they see something they didn't like, they can actually erase the line of data. Erase last line recorded in the sensor box. We're going to select yes. It maintains the rest of the data, but just that last line that was recorded, you can remove that and then proceed with your test. Let's see, we're still loading that 350 horsepower lug points. At any time during the test, you can also hit the stop manual. What that will do is stop the test, take you out of the test, and allow the customer or the user to take manual control of the engine with the load controller and throttle controller. And then at any time during the test, if you have a document set up like we do here at the right side, how to run an engine auto test, we can select that button and it'll instantly bring up a file for you. Here it's kind of a just instruction on how to run an automatic test. We're going to close that. We grabbed our final lug point, removing the load, decreasing the throttle to 1400 RPM. And what we can do is actually, again, at this time you can go and look at any other documents you want or navigate through the screens. Here the system is saying, do we want to repeat the test? Do we want to run a new test, or do we want to say complete test? To repeat the test, what that would do is it would rerun the exact same test that you already entered the information for. We want to select a new test. it would default all the values to 0, and the operator would enter in new information. And what we're going to do now is we're going to select complete test. And what that will do is run a cool down cycle. Again, we're looking for a value of under 190 degrees for our engine exhaust. Once we get there, we're going to proceed to shut down the engine and the cell. And while that's happening, we're going to save our data. Here comes up our data viewer. And what I want to do at this point is I want to see those 2 channels I added to my screen. I'm going to go up to my settings button. I'm going to just right click, select add. And one of them was air inlet, accept. I'm going to add another. And I think that was what, my fuel temp? Fuel temp, accept. And then we'll accept again. And that brings my information right into that report. Sometimes your graphs can get kind of cumbersome. Maybe here I didn't want to actually see my torque, or I wanted to see my torque but not my engine speed or engine RPM. You can basically clean that graph up instantly by just selecting one of these buttons here. As such. At this point, all I want to do for my reports is I want to show my graph and no analysis because I didn't do any analysis during the test, but I do want to show that table with all my data as seen here. I'm going to go ahead and select preview. As you can see, my customer name did change. It came up with that new customer. We have my graph, and then we also have the data, all the data listed in the table format. I did realize that there were some other comments that I did want to enter and offer to the customer. So at this time, I can select my notes. I can just type in additional some additional comments for the customer, literally. Select save. I'm going to hit my preview button again, and you can see those additional comments displayed right on the report. Now I can offer that to my customer in one nice, neat, clean report. So I'm going to go back to that screen. I inadvertently closed that. At this point, you can save the report as is. You can go and print a hard copy. You can print it to a PDF format and provide it to the customer in any means necessary. I'm going to select close there. We're going to select close here. And at this point, that concludes the actual demo portion for our 2 tests, the custom facility test as well as the horsepower step test. Amy, I'll return it to you.
Thank you, Eric and Nick, for running the 2 tests and for a sneak peek at some of the features that DynPro2 has to offer. We are now going to address any of the questions that our audience has today about today's webinar. As a reminder, you can submit questions through the question chat window on your control panel. We do have a couple questions here already. Our first question is from Victor, and his question is, how do you create a new gauge in DynPro2?
I'll field that one. Let me bring up the DynPro screen again. I'm actually going to go one step further, and what we're going to do is we're going to go into our screen design and actually create a new screen. I'm going to go back, and I'm going to remove my test panel, clean things up, go back into my screen design. First thing I'm going to do is go to preferences, and I'm going to add a background. So now we have a new background color. Now I can use the buttons on the ribbon, or I can just do a right click with my mouse button, select add, and here I'm going to add a digital readout. First thing I'm going to do is change the size, make it proportional to what I want to see. Double click on that, and these are all my settings. Go ahead and add that air inlet temp again. At this point, you can change styles. You can put a frame around it, and you can show a shadow or not. And the label, if we want to use this as air inlet temp, but as we can see for the size we want to make it here, maybe I just want to call it air inlet because we all know it's a temp, so I can just call it air inlet and remove the T. All right, and we can go over our units, dual display again. We can degree C for our second units. And then for the data, how do we want to show this? It kind of makes everything a little jumbled if we go kind of data to the right. So what we're going to do is we're going to do put the data on the bottom, and that'll clean it up nice for us. There we go. And again, with that, we can change the the colors. We can make everything match. And also what I'll do is I'll add a round gauge, typically used for engine speed, engine power. We're going to make this one, we're going to make it engine speed. We're going to go ahead and increase our scale. We'll say 2500. Our major ticks, we got too many ticks there, so we'll clean that up. There we go, every 500 RPM. Let's see, let's change that to a, let's make that a soft box, so kind of a different style. And let's go ahead and change some of the colors we have here. There we go, make things stand out in our units. Then we could also put a little glass over the top if we want. Then from there, we would just save that file off. One thing I do have is I have some kind of pre-made gauges that we have here. I'll open these screens up. Here's some screen files. And all these were basically made from this round gauge. This simple round gauge, we were able to make any one of these other gauges you see here. So the system's pretty versatile. Again, we have some predefined screens that we provide, and from there the customer can modify those or create their new screens with their company colors, company logos, things like that. What we also have here too is, I know this wasn't asked, but we have an auto align screen. What this does is, this actually, if you minimize a screen or have a different computer size, the gauges on the screen actually change along with the screen size. So it's a pretty nice feature. All right, I'll turn it back over to Amy.
Thank you, Nick. Our second question is from Ernest, and his question is, are you able to customize the customer's information?
This is Eric here. I'll answer that. So customizing the information on a report is very easy, as Nick showed before. The system will automatically prompt you to update that before the test starts. But you can actually update the fields. What I'm going to do here is actually go back to my control panel, get out of the screen design editor, and I'm going to click on the customer button. So in addition to being able to edit the actual information that shows up on the report, you can edit the categories, the fields. I'm just going to go into design and customize, and I'm able to make changes there. Say I don't have a contact information for a customer, I can easily delete that and delete the row. Let's say, for example, I'm running a chassis dynamometer as opposed to an engine system. I can start making some changes here so that it says some chassis vehicle information. We can do the chassis VIN number. We can also have the engine make, engine model, which you'd still probably have. But then we can also insert a row, and we can add a license plate number. So once I hit save and close, this information will be updated and will be able to be on my report.
Thank you, Eric. Our next question is from Jerry, and his question is, during the test it indicated the LCD values were changing. What does that mean?
Well, that's a good question. I'm actually going to go away from the DynPro2 program here and let me see if I can grab a picture of our sensor box. There we go. So what we have is on the face of the enclosures, both the silver and gold package, we have some LCD displays for the pressure and temperatures. What happens when you select that button, we can change from the actual value being measured to the actual name of the channel. On the pressures, what we'll do here is we'll have the name always listed, and then we'll differentiate between the actual units, so pressure, or PSI, or KPA, whatever's listed, and then we might, when you select the button, it'll change over to the actual value being measured. And on thermocouples, We go from the name to the actual value in degrees C or degrees F, whatever the system is set up to view.
All right, thank you, Nick. Our next question is from Vanessa, and her question is, how easy is it to calibrate a channel?
This is Eric again, and we briefly touched on it before. Calibration in DynPro2 is very, very simple. It's as easy as, again, right-clicking on the channel that you'd like to calibrate. So if you want to calibrate the torque channel, again, you right-click on it, and it gives you the auto zero option as well as the calibration option. So I have the option to select, I can calibrate by value or calibrate by coefficient. So if I want to calibrate by value, I select that and go through the standard calibration procedure for that dyno. On the TD3100, I would install the calibration arm, as well as installing whatever weights I have, calibrated certified weights. And then here I would enter in the information, the effective torque arm length multiplied by the weight that I'm hanging. I would just enter that in and hit accept. And then a calibration is done. It's as simple as that. For this case, I'm just going to go ahead and hit cancel.
Our next question is from Ron, and his question is, can I decide what documents I want to link from the system, or are those predetermined by Taylor?
Again, we'll send the system out kind of predefined our screens, but once again, the actual documents we bring up with these buttons here on the right side. And again, the buttons can be located anywhere. They can be any size, whatever information you want to list. But those can be defined also by the customer. We'll go back into screen design. We'll select the button, and then all we do is enter the address or the link to where the document is kept on the actual computer. At that time, you can also change the actual name of the button to show it to reference the actual document you want brought up. And that's pretty much about it. All right, Amy.
Thank you, Nick. I appreciate that. Our next question is from Oscar, and his question is, do you have the test panel up?
Well, this is Eric again, and again, as mentioned, it's very the screens are very flexible, very customizable, and at the top of the screen we have our control ribbon, and we have a few options. We have the test panel that we can choose if we display it or if we hide it. We also have a status bar at the bottom that we can display or hide. We even can hide the ribbon display if we want. We can just clean up the gauges entirely and get rid of that, leaving the operators focused on the test at hand.
All right, thank you guys. Thank you all for the great questions. Unfortunately, that is all the time we have. We will continue to answer any more questions that you have offline. So please email us at sales@taylordyno.com or give us a call at 414-755-0040. As a reminder, you will also receive a follow-up email with a link to view a recording of today's webinar. As you leave, you will receive a brief survey about today's presentation, and we would appreciate your feedback. Remember, this is our first webinar, so any feedback is appreciated. Also, please visit our news page for any last news and information from Taylor at www.taylordyno.com/news. This page includes press releases, newsletters, blog posts, videos, and even upcoming webinars. On behalf of Taylor Dynamometer, thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to having you as our guest at future webinars.